A true story of infidelity and crime. Chapter 1. Enjoy your listening. I was looking at the clock, counting the hours until my husband came home, and I was bored. The sound of the clock echoed through our house, a constant reminder of my loneliness. Every day became a monotonous cycle of waiting and no appointments. Mornings were the hardest. I would wake up to a cold, empty bed, the hole where my husband should have been already withered. I'd make breakfast for two, hoping today would be different, but the plate would be the same as always. The silence was deafening. I found myself talking to the plants, the television, anything to fill the void. I remember our first anniversary very clearly. I spent a long time preparing for a special romantic dinner, carefully setting the table with our best dishes and lighting the candles. I was even dressed in the dress she always loved, feeling excited and hopeful, but nothing turned out the way I wanted it to. The constant rejection, the loneliness, the feeling of being invisible in my own home, it was slowly crushing my soul. Then months passed, and I realized that I had a restlessness inside me, and for some reason, after this incident, criminal thoughts came to my mind, like dreams of running away. I was sitting at home one evening, and one of the neighbors outside said that there was peace in the barn, and that you could be lonely with horses. What the fuck does that mean? But yes, I had no other choice, unfortunately. Without thinking too hard, I put on the burgundy mini-skirt I bought the other day and put on my lipstick. Don't question it, lol. I grabbed my keys and headed for my 2013 car. I didn't know exactly what I was looking for. Maybe just a change of scenery, a brief respite from the emptiness of my home. But as I drove towards the stables, I felt an excitement I hadn't felt in years. I knew that this sudden decision could change everything. My heart was pounding with nervousness as I pulled up in front of the old wooden barn. My eyes adjusted to the dim light of the barn after a few minutes. I approached slowly, and after a long time of loneliness, I saw a horse there, and it felt good after being fed up with people. I ran my hand along its muscular neck and admired the powerful creature in front of me. I don't know why, but I felt depressed, and I told all my loneliness to the horse and fell asleep. I looked at the clock, and it was 9:30 p.m. I lost track of time as I stood there stroking his mane and pouring my heart out. The outside world had disappeared. It was just me and this magnificent creature, sharing a bond that defied explanation. Realizing that night was approaching, I reluctantly prepared to leave. "Thank you," I whispered, but I couldn't say exactly what for. I returned home in a daze, barely recognizing the familiar streets. That night, as I lay in bed next to my sleeping husband, I couldn't stop thinking about the barn. The smell of hay permeated my favorite and most beautiful mini-skirt, but I didn't fret and change it. Days turned into weeks, and I found myself making more and more elaborate excuses to visit the barn. An errand forgotten here, a book club that didn't exist there. Lies without number. The anticipation would build all day. The contrast between my time in the barn and my life at home was stark. At home I felt like a ghost, but people were surprised that I dressed like a model when I went to the barn. I knew what I was doing was risky. One evening, as I brushed my horse's hair, the realization hit me like a physical blow. These visits were no longer just an escape, they had become my lifeline. I pressed my face into his neck and breathed deeply. "What am I doing?" I whispered more to myself than to him, but as usual, he seemed to understand me. Every visit to the stables made the bond between me and the horse stronger. The moment my fingers touched his hide, an electric current ran through my body. My heart raced and my breath caught in my throat. Was I betraying my marriage, or had I finally found the bond I had been longing for? One afternoon, I almost got caught. I was brushing the horse's mane when I overheard my neighbor Emily talking to the stable owner, and I became very agitated. But as I was having a hard time, I noticed that their pressure was getting less and less, and I was relieved. But on the way home that day, reality began to dawn on me. What if I had been caught? The possible consequences loomed large in my mind. My reputation, my marriage, my whole life as I knew it could all be destroyed if someone found out about my secret visits. As I lay in bed that night, I made a decision. I would continue my visits, but I would be smarter about it. It was night-time. Outside, the storm was raging, and the rain was pounding against the windows. My husband was sleeping soundly beside me, oblivious to the storm in my heart. I slid out of bed, trying not to make a sound with my bare feet. I paused at the front door, my hand on the doorknob. Was I really doing this, sneaking out in the middle of the night, in a storm, to see a horse? But the pull inside me was undeniable. I had to go. I'm an idiot. The rain started later, but I was only wearing a very short black sports crop top and tight sports leggings. The rain was all over me. I even saw a chimney break on the way, but I finally made it to the barn. But just as I was about to bend down and spend time with my horse, pressing my forehead against his, my phone rang. I took it out of my bag, and I was scared when I saw the person on the screen. It was Kokum. I answered the call, my voice trembling. My husband's voice crackled through the phone, icy cold and sharp. "Where are you?" he asked. I stammered. "I just went for a drive." I wanted to tell him about my bond with my horse, but I couldn't, in this storm. His voice was dripping with doubt. "Do you really expect me to believe that?" "I woke up to find the car missing," he said, and he was freaking out. "Sorry is not enough," I whispered. "Sorry is not enough." He snapped. "Where are you? I'm coming to get you." I couldn't let him find me here. "No," I said very quickly. "I mean, there's no need. I'm going home now." And then he said, "You're hiding something from me, aren't you?" I said no, but my voice was shaking. "Do you understand?" He laughed hard and bitter, making me flinch. "I understand perfectly. You've been acting strange for months. You disappear for hours, you come home smelling." He cut himself off, and I could almost see the pieces of his mind falling into place. "It's not what you think," I said desperately, but even I didn't know what I meant anymore. He said enough is enough and called the police. It was really the end. The line went dead. I just stood there and realized the reality of the situation. The police were coming. My husband was suspicious. I didn't know if I had lost my head in my loneliness. Please tell me that. My heart pounded in my chest as the police lights flashed in the distance. The storm was raging, but I didn't realize that I was soaked and still wearing crops. Oh my God. I saw the carriage doors open, and I leaned against my horse waiting because I was tired. Suddenly the stable door opened. My husband was standing there, anger and confusion on his face. Behind him were two policemen. "What the hell is this?" he asked. I opened my mouth to speak, but no words came out. How could I explain something I barely understood myself? The connection I felt with this animal was beyond anything I had ever experienced before. One of the officers stepped forward, his face a mixture of concern and confusion. "Ma'am, are you okay? Your husband reported you missing." I nodded, and she asked if my husband kept disappearing because of this damn thing. I can explain. I stammered, but the words were coming out of my mouth in gibberish. The other officer cleared his throat awkwardly. "Sir, ma'am, perhaps we should continue this conversation elsewhere." But my husband wasn't listening. He took a step closer, his fists clenched at his sides. "Do you have any idea what I went through tonight? I thought something terrible had happened to you, but what you did was stupid. Was it really? You're right," I said, my voice stronger now. "I'm coming here, and there's something I need to tell you." As I opened my mouth to speak, I wondered how I could tell them what I barely understood myself. It's not what you think. How could I explain something that even I barely understood myself? I took a deep breath and started. "This horse. He's not just an animal to me," I began. My husband's brows furrowed, and I could see the disbelief etched on his face. "I know it sounds crazy, but when I'm with him I feel alive, at peace." My husband scoffed, shaking his head. "Is that clear? By a horse? Are you out of your mind?" I said, "You don't understand. I was alone for years and I didn't enjoy life." and I explained that I loved my horse and was attracted to him in general. My husband intervened. If there was such a thing, why didn't you tell me? The officers were whispering among themselves. His question hit me hard, and I whispered. I tried, with tears in my eyes, many times, but you always kept to yourself, and I felt so lonely. I said. There was pain in his eyes, and his voice trembled as he said, So you chose a horse over me. I never wanted this to happen, but I can't pretend any more. This is who I am now. The truth was out there for everyone to see, but as I stood there vulnerable, I couldn't help but wonder, would this revelation be my liberation or my undoing? Ma'am, one of the officers finally broke the silence, his voice cautious. I'm not sure we have any grounds for legal action here, but… She interrupted and looked to her partner for support, but when my husband spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. How long? He asked, his eyes never leaving mine. How long have you been coming here? Months, I said with difficulty. I didn't mean to hurt him, but when I looked at the pain in his eyes, I realized the damage had already been done. So what now? He asked, his voice hard. Do you choose the horse over your marriage, over everything we built together? I don't know, I said quietly, and it was the most honest thing I'd said in months. I just know things can't go back to the way they were. As I walked out of the barn, as the police officers murmured about filing reports, I felt both terror and excitement. Life as I knew it was over, shattered by the truth I had kept hidden for so long. I knew the consequences of my choice would be far-reaching. I would lose my home, my stability, possibly even my friends and family. But standing there, the passion of what really mattered. The clothes I was wearing had caught my husband's attention because I never wore crops and tights around him. My husband looked at me and grabbed my hands and bent down in front of me, helplessly taking the straw from my leg. He touched my belly and rubbed it. I could see his tears. Finally he gave me some money and walked away with his shoulders slumped. Taking a deep breath, I made my choice. I walked over to my horse and ran my hand along his strong neck. Despite the storm I knew was coming, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. As the taillights of my husband's car disappeared down the driveway, I felt a strange mix of emotions wash over me. Relief, guilt, and a gnawing uncertainty fought for dominance in my mind. I stood there, watching the last traces of my old life fade into the night. The house felt different now. Emptier. I moved from room to room, my footsteps echoing in the silence. In every corner were memories of the life I had left behind. I couldn't help but wonder if I had made the right choice. I kept hearing messages on my phone. I opened the first one. It was from my best friend Sarah. Are you okay? What happened? I didn't even reply, but then I visited the barn and all my doubts disappeared. The moment I saw my horse, felt his warm breath on my skin, I knew I had made the right decision. I felt more myself in his presence than I ever had before. There were still hard days. Holidays were the hardest, reminding me of family gatherings that I was no longer a part of. I ran my fingers through my hair and noticed how it had grown since the last time I had bothered to cut it. My skin had a healthy glow from spending so much time in the barn, but it wasn't just my physical appearance that had changed. There was also something different about my posture, the way I held myself. I began to keep a journal documenting my journey of self-discovery. Some days I would write pages and pages about my experiences at the barn. Other days I struggled to put my conflicting emotions into words. But little by little, writing by writing, I began to see a new version of myself emerge. One evening, as I sat on my small balcony watching the sunset, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. I realized that this journey of self-discovery was not yet over. There would be more challenges ahead, more growth, more changes, but for the first time, I was excited about the unknown future that lay ahead. Love, a simple word, but its meaning can be maddeningly elusive. As I reflected on the bond between my horse and me, I found myself questioning not only my own experiences, but the very foundations of how we define emotional bonds. Can an animal really fill the void left by human relationships? I couldn't stop thinking about it, and every time I visited the barn, a warmth and excitement filled me. When I saw her, my heart beat faster and a beautiful peace filled me. I would wear my best dresses and $1,000 heels to go to her. I decided to go to my county and talk to a therapist to get help with this. He listened patiently as I explained my conflicting feelings. Love comes in many forms, he told me. What matters is how it makes you feel and how it affects your life. His words spun in my head for hours for no reason. I began to accept that yes, indeed, this was love, gentle nuzzles and soft neighs that never failed to make me smile. And wait a minute, I was about to do something much more interesting. By the way, I forgot to tell you that his name is Adam. It's been a year and a half, and I've had some good times with him, and I've had sex with him at night. Yes, with my horse, because he's my lover. I use all my sexuality for him, and he doesn't stay in the barn anymore. I live with him in my house, but one day I woke up and I was in a coma. What kind of nonsense is that? Ha ha ha. I'm waiting for your opinion about this story in the comments. I hope I will be able to give you a real taste of infidelity story.